Hello, I'm Mantastic'c and Fantastic, and today I want to talk about version 21.3 update, which has just gone live in North America, along with all the new evolutions and upgrades. So I'm always excited about version updates because it means hopefully quality of life is improved, along with new evolutions and upgrades breathing life into older cards. So without further ado, let's just jump right into the meat of it. So if you are playing on iOS, you need to be at least on 12.0 or higher. Just make sure your software is updated enough. If you are subscribed to the Pad Pass, you will be able to acquire various badges automatically, including the No Skyfall badge, which was originally locked behind 30 ranking dungeon crowns, and that does take a significant amount of time and effort to actually achieve, so being able to completely bypass with the Pad Pass can be beneficial for players who haven't been playing so long, or if they just don't like ranking dungeons, because farming certain stuff is significantly faster when you have no Skyfalls. Also, the Team HP 15% and Rank EXP 10% is also available. The 2-second orb movement time badge max team cost decrease has been from 400 to 300. I have not encountered team cost issues in many years, but maybe it's an issue for newer players. In addition to all that, the text search function is now expanded to now have 3 tabs where you can search up a monster, a skill, and a leader skill all simultaneously. Unfortunately, what I only care about is having multiple filters for the active skill. I want to search, like, say, bind clearing and adding combos, let's say. I'm just picking random metrics put together. That would be something that would be great. This does not really achieve anything. Like, why do I need to search up Isis and bind clearing? Because, like, all Isises do, like, bind clearing, so to speak. So I think it's just pretty darn awkward overall. Like, yes, it is still a slight improvement, but it's still light years behind the third-player databases that have been forcefully taken down. But, again, it's still at least a step forward. The monster book, we now can display Super Awakenings. Again, a little outdated, but I did notice there was one thing in here. I'm not sure if it was from this time, but there is in this tab here, you can filter for cards that have, for their awakenings, it shows the changed awoken. So if they transform, there's going to be a little checkbox down below that can show that if they have, you want to search of a card of, say, levitation, post-transformation, it will show it up. I don't know if that's new or not, but that's something that I just noticed when I was going through my game itself this morning. When you assist a monster, you can now fully awaken it prior to assisting it, which is quite nice. Like, because, especially when new updates or upgrades come out, many cards gained extra awakening slots for weapon assists, and they wouldn't necessarily show up when you're trying to assist it, and this just saves buttons, it saves clicking. It's just a nice little thing to have overall. We are going to have a new Awoken skill called Aging in a Barrel, amusingly enough, for the future Bartenders event. Basically, from Battle 5 and onward, you get 1.5 times stats, and if it's Battle 10, you get 2 times stats for that respective card. So that is a significant stat increase, which is great because usually towards the end of a dungeon, things start hitting harder and harder, and when you all of a sudden have double the amount of health on a given card, it can be potentially meaningful enough to let you survive stuff. Of course, calculating your health and effective health is going to become an absolute nightmare at this point in time because you can't just enter a dungeon and figure it out. You have to go 10 floors in. So just something to keep in the back of your mind, but it's a buff nevertheless if you have that awakening. The other awakening that has been notably transformed is the T awakening. It's a pretty rare awakening for the most part, and now it increases the damage to 8 times personal damage from 4 times. A significant damage increase, but it is still a relatively rare awakening that's not matched too often. But again, it is new. If there are weapon assists, which there are some that have this T awakening, it can be a way to technically add a stupendous amount of personal damage if you match this specific T pattern. 4-player mode will be added to 8-player mode. 4-player mode is a complete disaster in all honesty. It's just showing a bit more information in the dungeon along with max bonuses being more noticeable. I have not played 4-player since its inception really because I realized it was not really worth the time, effort, or sanity required, along with never really finding people to play with unless I actually streamed. So I guess it's cool that they're doing things to it, but I'd rather them do better quality of life for the main game itself. Either way, new Ordeal evolutions for a variety of cards, and I will take a look at those momentarily. And in addition to that, there's now going to be an abbreviation of numbers of digits with M and G during battles. I think M is for million, G is going to be like not billion, but it's like giga, I think. Not quite sure what it's supposed to be. Like B would make sense, but maybe B looks kind of close to 8, which maybe if they're trying to go for visibility improvements, maybe that's the thing. I think it's really just going for giga instead, but M is million, which seems pretty great. Like, again, numbers have become so heavily inflated that it's nice to actually see, you know, possibly your numbers a bit easier. Like, it's a little odd to see G, because like in my head G does not mean like a billion, but it is, so to speak. Monster box size is increased by default, so now from 200 to 500. So even if you have been playing for a prolonged period of time, all players will have increased their monster box space automatically. So basically when you log in today, you will notice you have 300 more monster box space. Pretty cool stuff all around. There's a new super gravity dungeon in Endless Corridors. Nothing particularly exciting here. And wait, when performing max enhancement as a monster of an awoken skill assist, extra latent slot would no longer be displayed. This is actually a big deal because normally when you try and press the max enhance button, there was going to be the prompt to give latent awoken extra slots for weapon assists. And that was completely useless because you never want to check that box anyway. So when you are max enhancing weapon assists now, you won't be prompted by this anymore because weapon assists cannot use latent awakening. So this is actually a nice quality of life feature in my opinion. So in addition to that, we're going to have 11 player resets. So basically all the resets starting from rank 150 all the way to rank 1100 will be reset along with best friends and presents. So if you are close to a various rank milestone, you should possibly push a little harder for the mid-May reset because the timing says mid-May after a maintenance. So if you're close to any of these thresholds, push a little harder because you get an extra free roll, so to speak. And on the 1100 roll, like there is a chance of getting minimum 7-star rarity cards, but you might get some rem draws and then you get a bunch of 6-star godfest exclusives, which I got on Fantastic. Point of the matter is resets are coming. Push if you're close to a threshold. So there's going to be a bunch of new Ordeal evolutions available, and if you utilize their respective pre-evolution form as a leader and you enter the dungeon and clear it by puzzling through the various hurdles they throw at you, you are going to be able to achieve their Ordeal evolution forms. And I am just going to go take a quick little look-see at what they look like here. So there are two notable ones. Horus is unfortunately not one of the notable ones. So Horus in their Ordeal form does large amounts of damage, which is kind of the norm for most Ordeal cards in all honesty. Active skills, a 3-turn cooldown that gives you movement time and RCV, along with increasing their damage cap to 8 billion for a single turn, so potentially 24 billion at once. And they like to match 4 attributes and TPAs, and the levitation is obviously nice for super gravity dungeons. It's just a nice damage stick that deals with movement time and RCV debuffs. Is it amazing? Not really, but I guess it's nice to have. I'm still going to probably make one because I have just so many Horuses lying around. But on the other hand, Isis is a quite exciting card to actually try and pursue. And make sure you have follow-up attack and guard break in order to take advantage of her fully when you enter her Ordeal dungeon. And her awakenings are 4 enhanced hard orbs, levitation, and then 6 3 attributes and a double L. So with the double L, she can take the assist recovery latent, which is a big deal. And she also has strong personal damage and strong healing output with this 2100 RCV stat. But the fun doesn't stop there. Her active skill is a full cleric in the sense that it provides bind, awoken bind, and unmatchable clearing on a 5-turn cooldown, which is wonderful as is, but it also gives damage reduction and increases their damage cap to 5 billion for 2 turns. So she's kind of like Amaterasu Dragon, so to speak, in the sense that it was a cleric with damage reduction built in. But Isis can potentially hit higher levels of damage if you are able to trigger the 3 attributes and maybe an L alongside of it. And the fact that she has 3 attributes means she can out DPS Amaterasu Dragon when you use her active skill for those 2 turns. Quite powerful, nice to have. I'm definitely going to make an Isis and invest in it because this is a powerful and useful cleric, and it's just good to have more options for your clerics. It's never bad to have multiple things to draw upon. On the other hand, Bastet is not so exciting. She has 5-10 combos, which is kind of like a standard nowadays. It's nothing, it's obviously strong damage, but it's not as unique as it once was, even just a few months ago, really. Active Skill is a 6-turn cooldown that gives you 1.5 times movement time, 1 spinner, and gives them damage cap increase along with all attacks being mass attack for 6 turns. So Bastet can, in theory, if you are playing and you can actually hit large amounts of damage for wood and dark, can be dealing 15 billion damage every single turn, which is cool. And the single spinner and the bonus movement time lets you technically fish out orbs that would have been unaccessible otherwise. So in theory, Bastet can take care of orb generation needs if you have enough movement time on your team to actually take advantage of the 1.5 times buff to fish out your orbs needed for activation. It's definitely a nice alternative to compare to other things that are available, like permanent looping spinners. It just gives the option. It does give her damage output. Just something to keep in mind. I don't think it's going to be used too often because generally speaking, most teams nowadays have their own built-in orb generation system. Like virtually every leader nowadays has a 2 to 3 turn cooldown that basically generates their orbs needed. So if you don't have that, Bastet can definitely be like kind of like a crutch, so to speak, to bridge that gap. And then finally for Ordeal, Zeus, he has a bunch of 10 combos like Bastet, a bunch of skill boosts, and an active skill that gives 8 billion damage cap for 1 turn to all allies. So your whole team can deal spectacular amounts of damage. The whole board is enhanced, and it also reduces the enemy's HP by 35%. So a significant gravity, and the whole team dealing spectacular amounts of damage. It's incredibly unique, and whenever something is unique, it tends to be at least valuable because there will be situations where you may want this type of active skill, and the fact that Zeus Verse is a completely farmable monster means you should go out of your way to actually, evolve him, because even though Pantheon cards are quite plentiful, farmable is obviously ideal. One thing I didn't mention about Isis, and her biggest drawback by far, is no skill boost, so that's going to be a big hindrance when you're trying to transform your team overall. On the other hand, let's take a look at the new evolutions and upgrades for existing cards that are not Ordeal evolutions. So, Sheet is, in her green form, one of the most wonderfully strong utility-based cards we're going to have for a cleric, because I like clerics of utility. She has poison resist, she has tape resist, she technically has strong damage output with levitation and double 10 with double TPA. It can deal at least some meaningful amounts of damage. Double TPA means she could technically replenish or put back your orbs that were made unmatchable at least 2 at a time per wood and fire TPA. It's just something which is, I guess, nice to have. More TPAs would have been a bit better for that. Like if a 10 combo was a TPA plus, it would have been a bit easier to put back those unmatchable orbs. But you know what? That's okay, because her active skill is still useful. It has a 6x5 board change and the full cleric, the cleric effect of bind and awoken bind and unmatchable. So she deals with the clericing needs and fixes bad boards. And at least at this point in time, we're starting to reach a point where certain teams cannot truly function on smaller boards. So Sheet will solve that issue, which is a big deal, along with fulfilling the need that we have to have a cleric in every given dungeon. So it's just a nice option to have. This morning, once I saw this, I quickly went and evolved Sheet into this form, just so it's sitting in my box and I don't forget that she exists. And while I mentioned that these double TPA would be nicer if it's 4 TPAs, she can acquire that via Super Awakenings, which would be nice if you're going to rely on her for unmatchable. But again, just be mindful of the fact that it'll be only 2 skill boosts for herself. Fire Sheet has more skill boosts on the other hand, and potentially respectably amounts of damage, but her active skill is nowhere near as impressive or important because it's just increasing your leader's damage cap to 8 billion for 1 turn and then voiding damage and attribute absorption for a single turn. I've started becoming less inclined to utilize cards with 1 turn of damage and attribute absorption because we're starting to see many more spawns with super resolve that have these absorption mechanics for like 999 turns. So 1 turn is not sufficient. So I find it can be a little challenging to bring it along in a given team because you run the risk of never being able to clear it and that's just obviously going to be sad if you get to like pretty far in a dungeon. On the other hand, Blue Balden is going to be a wonderful option for your mono water teams potentially, or just any team that can truly take advantage of his colors, because his active skill is a 4-turn cooldown that gives you movement time buff, 7x6 board, attack, and RCV buff, along with, just all the buffs and a board change in one given card. And he does have 6 skill boosts. He does have 2 seconds of board movement time with the capacity to gain either L+, which is huge because now he can take the assist recovery Latent Awakening. Obviously, you have to be mindful of the fact that he won't be bind immune, so you should inherit something on top of it. But this L is going to be immensely valuable because he can then put back your assist and correct any kind of debuff, including board shrinkages. And like I mentioned before, board shrinkages are starting to become more prevalent along with various heavy debuffs. At least maybe like a month or 2 or 3 ago, I feel like the main mechanics you had to counter in a given dungeon are absorption, damage, or attribute, clericking needs, damage penetration, and those are really kind of the 3 main mechanics I feel that you couldn't really get around otherwise, and you kind of always had to bring something that could deal with those particular problems. Looping shields were oftentimes necessary for endgame stuff, but for most given other content, you didn't necessarily need the looping shield. So those 3 things are still around today, just as lethal and impossible to overcome, but we're now starting to see significantly more heavy debuffs. By that, I mean massive movement time debuffs, potentially 0 times RCV, or huge attack debuffs that you do no damage and then get executed by the time it wears off. So we're starting to have to bring cards that have these extra layers of mechanics to counter these problematic debuffs, and Blue Baldwin is going to cover all those with that board shrinkage. It's something to keep in mind if you're able to squeeze it onto a given team, because again, getting hit by a 0 times RCV buff for multiple turns is pretty much death because you just can't survive and there's no way to puzzle through it. So having these types of active skills are important. On the flip side, his light red form does deal large amounts of damage, especially when you match that TPA, but the active skill is nowhere near as utility loaded as the blue form. Sure, you get an attack buff that lasts for 6 turns, so in theory it lasts forever, but that's not enough. We need every kind of mechanic squeezed in because we have so many mechanics to deal with. Now, these little ivory dragons, or like the other equivalent forms in their various colors, they have a low star rarity, which could be good for certain niche situations where you have to use lower rarity cards, and they deal spectacular amounts of damage with 410 combos, 4 enhanced combos of the respective attribute, and a T Awakening. Active skill is a 3-turn cooldown that increases their damage cap for all 3 attributes, and an attack and RCV buff for all of your light monsters or their respective colors. And this is going to be copy pasted to every single color, and their main value is this low rarity and the fact that you potentially are able to bring them in for certain dungeons where rarity becomes an issue. So this Super Basilisk, same idea. Copy pasted the stuff, but change the colors. Just as useful as their other form. Super Holy Dragon, 2-star rarity, 8 TPAs, levitation, gives them an attack buff along with a damage cap buff, and changes water and hazards to light. Nothing spectacular, but again, low rarity if in case you're playing something with low rarity stuff. Super Devil Dragon is double blob, double combo war, similar active skill of damage cap increase, 10 times personal damage. Again, you're just using them for these low rarity stuff, and when they show up again later on, it's going to be like a copy, similar idea. For Super King Flamey, their Awakening set is going to be nearly identical to the other colors, so whatever I say about one of them kind of applies to all of them. And it's a 6-star rarity, so it's not that low in all honesty. Pantheon cards are the same amount, so nothing special there. Awakenings-wise is a bunch of VDPs with a brick and a combo or potential for double brick. Nothing special in all honesty. They're just mostly cute things, so that's cool. I like Bubbly because they are blue. They are cute. That's all. Woodsy, same idea. Copy pasting colors, just changing the colors between all the different bloblets. Super Salamanders, kind of like Basilisk or Ivory Dragon, just changing the colors. We're just going to go right past them. Sea Serpent, same idea. Super Dragonette, same idea. I don't know why they weren't all together in that order. Oh well. Horus received a buff to their Awakenings, and I still will never probably use them in all honesty, except for trying to get his Ordeal evolution, but it does technically make it a bit easier with better awakenings, which I guess is kind of nice, a stronger leader skill. Weapon assist has, I believe, more orb enhances or a skill boost. I don't recall what it was before, but never going to necessarily use it that often. Super Volcano Dragon has the most comical number of 7 combo awakenings at 11. If you remember using the old Seawolf, who scaled off of 7 combos, Volcano Dragon was technically a great way to add in massive amounts of damage to your entire team. 2-star rarity might be relevant for certain team compositions or challenges. Yeah, okay, cool. Anima has Clericking potential on a 7-turn cooldown, gives you full HP recovery, Awoken Bind, and Unmatchable. So just regular binds you can't deal with, but most things are bind immune anyway, so it usually won't be an issue. On a 7-turn cooldown, which is on the longer side, it does create some fire orbs. It does give you an attack buff. They do have some personal damage, but it's nowhere near enough to be meaningful. So it's just like you do a bit of everything, but nothing great. Xiangmei was at one point a premier team that was incredibly expensive to acquire because they could make a system and kill stuff. Unfortunately, it's nowhere near as great as it used to be. Their awakenings are not condensed enough to be meaningful. Their active skill is a cleric now because it gives Awoken, Skill Bind, and Unmatchable along with a single turn of haste and making hard orbs. With that haste, you technically can form a system, but it's just not anywhere near that important as it used to be. Sheet in their base form, I'm probably not going to be utilizing them much anyways unless you really wanted a water TPA-oriented cleric, because they do have the clericking active skill of Awoken Bind and Unmatchable. They can take the Unmatchable latent with their multiple TPAs to clear the Unmatchable status. It's just something. I like her green form more at this point in time. Weapon assist gained something. Not sure what, but something. Isis received buffs. Isis in this form here is nowhere near important enough, to be honest, because you're just going to really want to have her Ordeal form. Yeah, sure, she does have potentially 4 skill boosts, but the Ordeal form just brings much better stats overall. And a stronger damage output, because Isis here has 0 damage output. Ordeal Isis actually can deal damage, and it is important nowadays when you need every card to deal meaningful amounts. Isis has the same awakenings as Horus's weapon assist, except switch colors. Active skill is a big shield and a full cleric, so maybe in niche situations where you need it on turn 1, maybe. Super Aurora Dragon has 6 VDPs. They have the same attack buff that Super Volcano Dragon had. Low rarity is their main zest. Yu has 4 10 combos, a bunch of killers, attack buff, along with attribute absorption for 6 turns. 6 turns of attribute absorption is significant. Don't really know how many places it's going to be necessary to have, but it's nice to know that it is potentially available. Amino, with way too long of a name that it barely fits in the box, amusingly enough, has received some buffs to their awakenings, I think, to deal a bit more damage. It's probably insignificant amounts of damage anyways. It'd be much nicer if all 6 of these bottom awakenings were changed to like even just anything else, like team HPs, skill boosts, something else. The damage is insignificant. It is still a looping shield, I guess, if you really were truly desperate for something. Weapon assist is Cloud, Jam resist 4 OEs, nothing amazing, nothing bad, probably not going to use it much. Amino in their light green form has 4 10 combos, which is probably not going to be enough damage, unfortunately, but they do have 4 enhanced light combos, which is a significant amount. Active skill, I don't quite know how it was changed. Maybe it makes more orbs than before, but it's still technically a 2-turn cooldown, which can solve orb generation needs for light or wood-based teams. Technically, it can. It's, I guess, kind of nice in that sense, but I don't really see myself using it much. Amino in their fire water form has 4 skill boosts, tons of 7 combos, and super poison resist. Active skill gives you a movement time and RCV buff, and a small amount of damage reduction for 2 turns. On a 2-turn cooldown with a 3-turn active skill, it's not a bad thing overall. You can have almost 100% uptime on your looping shield with a card who does deal damage. It's nothing super special, but it's just at least an option overall. Bastet's has been improved. I'm not particularly excited for her. She's way better in her Ordeal form. These buffs just kind of help you get her Ordeal form a little bit easier. Weapon assist mirrors Horus and Isis's, but just different colors for her OEs. The Super Earth Dragon, I wish they grouped these all together. Like, everything's kind of all over the place, I feel. It's got 410 combos, but low rarity if you ever need it. Something there. Avalon Drake is exciting. I was always a big fan of Avalon Drake, especially when the original Nautilus reigned supreme. He was a spectacular choice due to their large number of skill boosts and, at the time, strong personal damage. Right now, 4-7 combos and 4 VDPs is only meaningful in the instances where you actually make a 3x3 box. But his Super Awakening now has a brick, and their active skill and their leader skill have also been updated. Their active skill adds combos along with providing attribute and damage absorption for 3 turns instead of 2 if I'm not mistaken. So a significant buff there, and bonus combos is nice icing on the cake. Creates a whole board of wood and light orbs. But the active skill boosts damage and health for wood attribute and god types, and you gain more damage and auto follow attack when you match wood and light. And who matches wood and light orbs? New Year's Nordis, who is a wonderful swipe farming option. So Avalon Drake can actually be a strong leader for your New Year's Nordis teams with a nice fat amount of 4.5 times HP and 30 to 36 times attack multiplier, I think, with that auto follow attack. So something nice to have there. And because of the brick, because of the double 7s, they should be dealing respectably large amounts of damage. And I guess at the same time, if you are playing through content and you do need to actually do damage penetration, Avalon Drake technically solves that issue with their VDPs. So something to keep in mind if you have New Year's Nordis, Avalon Drake can be a spectacular leader option overall. Alexander has a spectacular name. I think it's one of the cooler names for a male. If I had a boy, I would name him Alexander because it sounds impressive. But regardless of all that, Alexander is an okay card. Nothing like, I don't think they're that spectacular in these forms here. Like, their active skill has been buffed to now give RCBN movement time for 2 turns. So it's permanent uptime on this RCBN movement time. And when he swaps forms, it's an attack buff permanently. So in theory, double Alexanders will provide you with, or even just 1 Alexander in all honesty. Well, you need 2 actually, because otherwise it doesn't quite loop that well because of the 2-turn cooldown before they swap back and forward. But in theory, you could have a large uptime on movement time, RCB, and attack buffing. But in all honesty, I'm much more interested in their weapon assist. It's now a skill boost plus, along with 5 OEs and team HP. One of my most commonly used weapon assists when I don't know what to inherit, I inherit Alexander. Because on a 20-turn cooldown, it's much less likely to accidentally overcharge. The Black Metal Bastet has double 7, double 10, team HPs, team RCV, but the active skill does actually nothing. Like, who needs mass attacking? Like, it's just not a thing. So, yes, your awakenings are not bad, but your active skill doesn't contribute anything, which in turn makes me not want to actually use you. Ordeal Artemis has received buffs to her awakenings. I'm assuming her offensive might has improved because I just don't remember what it was beforehand. Active skill is a movement time buff and damage cap increase for 2 turns while also changing fire and water to wood. So in theory, you could deal 15 billion damage 2 turns in a row, which can be not bad overall as a nice damage stick for wood-based, especially wood-based TPA teams. Zeus Verse has received buffs to deal more damage. They do 35% gravity, which is still pretty cool because it's a true gravity. Ordeal form is much shorter on an 18-turn cooldown instead of 35, but it's, I guess, nice to have, you know, some stuff overall. Apocalypse. I feel like this card has been completely forgotten. I just forgot that they existed. Now I remember they do exist because Avalon Drake always kind of overshadowed them in terms of viability because Apocalypse does technically do damage and attribute absorption for 2 turns and creates a nice board with haste. So it does do something useful. Does have double 10, double TPA, levitation. So they could potentially be a respectable damage option for your light-based teams. It is possible overall. And then Xiu Min, one of the other 4 gentlemen, they have double break, they have 6 VDPs, they have combo, or kind of a weird mix of awakenings in all honesty. But this active skill on a 9-turn cooldown gives you 8 turns of damage absorption cancellation. I don't really quite know where we need 8 turns of damage absorption cancellation, but at the same time, it's kind of nice to have. Like, there may be instances where you need to have this amount of, damage absorption cancellation, along with technically an attack buff by 3 times for 8 turns. So it's nice to have. It's not going to be used too often, I feel, overall, but it's nice to have. Ilm in their various forms have received buffs. I don't know, it's just a big shield for 1 turn and a board change. Nothing special there, unfortunately. Weapon assist is double skill boost, double skill binder resist, cross, and 4 OEs. Quite a nice spread of awakenings. It's definitely something I might pull out every once in a while, because if you've noticed, quite a few of the cards here, like Amino and CAMMY Subi, don't have any skill binder resist, so it's nice having a way to put on multiple skill binder resist from a single weapon assist and skill boost to get yourself transformed. Their red form has improved awakenings. I don't quite know how it got improved, but they have double team HPs, they have they have 2 10 combos, and full blind resist, which is a nice mix of awakenings. And their active skill is the same thing. It's a single roulette of fire, dark, and hard orbs that gives you RCV and more movement time. So I guess, I don't know, never mind. I don't think it's that great, in all honesty. I wouldn't use it, to be honest, I feel. If this spinner lasted long enough, sure, but it doesn't last quite long enough. Ilm, in their dark form, has a large attack stat, and I guess because of these offensive awakenings, that large attack stat does kind of make it so they have deceptively more damage, especially when you can take advantage of the yin or yang awakening that's present here. Active skill is kind of weird, though. Heal orbs appear as barbed orbs, so ways to hurt yourself for 1 turn. Movement time buff and big shield for a single turn. Kind of weird. Not quite sure where I'm going to necessarily need this, so it's kind of weird. Odd. Cursed Worm. I've not seen this card in so long. It has some damage output, but no attack stats, so it's probably insignificant. Active skill is Dark Orb Enhanced and a small tiny attack buff, but it is technically a looping shield. So I guess if you do need another dark attribute card as a looping shield, sure, but they're kind of like scraping the barrel, because like they only have 2 skill boosts and their offensive might is nothing spectacular whatsoever. I guess with levitation, maybe it could edge out with 777, 6-7 combos. Maybe that would be enough to push it over the edge. It's again a card I didn't really remember existing. Shogun has 5-10 combo awakenings, and their active skill gives themselves an attack buff for themselves and all dragons, increases their damage cap to 8 billion for 1 turn on a 2-turn cooldown, but it changes hearts to poison, which is kind of alarming. I like healing. I don't like hurting myself, so not quite sure where we'd use them. Xinhua, the Winter Plum, has 2-10 combos, 8 TPAs. Active skill is a cleric that also gives you a single turn of haste with a bit of orb generation. Not a bad active skill by any means, and in theory, you could utilize the 8 TPAs for the unmatchable latent to, put back your assist, or at the same time, matching a TPA would technically mean she does more damage. This is technically a farmable cleric because all it costs is monster points. It's like a very low investment to access, and in theory, you could gain a double 7 combo to bring her up to 2 10s, 2 7s, 8 TPAs, can deal damage at least at that point, potentially. Rafine received a significant buff. Their awakenings have been condensed. There is a levitation, which I don't think was there beforehand either. They also have a 3rd attribute now, which can definitely ease some team building restraints, because now you have a water attribute when you didn't have beforehand. Active skill is the same 3-turn cooldown that gives you 4 turns of a roulette, but 4 turns of movement time and attack buff for all subs. Great rainbow card overall, because again, it solves the issue of orb generation. So in theory, a single Rafine is all you need for orb generation for rainbow based teams, because it lasts long enough and it lasts an extra turn. So if there's like on death animations, you don't lose turns, so to speak, because a 3-turn cooldown for 4 turns of value means it still will be ready and available. So it is definitely an option for rainbow based teams. They can deal respectably large amounts of damage with levitation, with guard break. They can be a great solution overall, and their stats have been also improved. Leader skills also pushed up to 78% damage reduction, gives bonus combos, gives 11 million auto follow-up attack damage, and you're pretty much guaranteed to always have your colors anyways because of that spinner and the orb movement time. Weapon assist has 2 OEs of every single color, guard break, a second of movement time. Great for your rainbow-based teams when you want to actually give damage to a card who doesn't have guard break, because one of the largest advantages of rainbow teams is being able to penetrate through high defenses with the guard break awakening, and this is a great way to do so if you can justify not having team HP awakenings. Other weapon assist still has guard break as well, along with the 5 attribute awakening, which is kind of cool. So in theory, that card also gains 4.5 times personal damage. Gremory has 4 Ls like she always did beforehand, so she can be a good solution for putting back your assists. She is a cleric on a 6-turn cooldown that creates a column of dark, a column of hearts, and again, fully recovers bind, awoken bind, and unmatchable. It's an option if you need a cleric that can quickly put back your weapon assists. And I guess in theory that single heart L could potentially give a little bit more damage mitigation. Her weapon assist has 4 dark OEs, a single heart enhance, 2 Ls which can't be used to put back your assist because it's an assist, so it gets removed when the assists get removed, and a single team HP. It's just, I guess, okay to have. It's still a cleric-based active skill. Gremory in her light-based form, it received a buff to the leader skill, but it's a buff that's completely insignificant, so it's just not going to change anything. Blue form has double 10, double VDP, double L, double combo orb. A weird mix of awakenings in all honesty. Active skill gives you void damage absorption and attribute absorption for 2 turns, and all orbs enhance and 1.5 times attack for all allies for a single turn. It could be a damage absorption solution. I'm not sure if I'm going to go out of my way to pursue it necessarily, but it is at least a option. And it's technically the right colors for Mutro of double VDP, double 10, so I guess she might do some damage there. CAMMY Subi has, in her non-Rem draw holding form, it's just not that important in all honesty. It's better to really look at her other form. But her weapon assist has double L, Devil Killer, Machine Killer, 2 Recover Bind Awakenings, I think they're called, and a follow-up attack. Interesting spread of awakenings. I guess it's just nice to have an interesting spread. But I am a much bigger fan of CAMMY Subi in Diamond Rem Draw form. So she's got 6 enhanced heart orbs. So right away, she's going to have large amounts of healing output. And it's not showing her level 120 stats, which is kind of frustrating, but she has significant healing potential. Her active skill also provides 4 heart orbs, enhancing the whole board and the full cleric active skill. Again, it's just nice to have options for different clerics. Her damage output is going to be insignificant, even with, unless you're matching like VDP plus, maybe 4 VDPs, 210 combos will be meaningful enough, but you're probably better off just taking skill boost to get yourself transformed and just relying on her for the large amounts of healing output that she does provide. Her green form has 410 combos, 4 enhanced wood combos. Active skill creates a 7x6 board, all orbs appearing enhanced, an attack buff, and a movement time buff. It's, I guess, providing some utility overall, like movement time, attack buff, bigger board, enhancing. Pretty nice utility overall, especially if you are playing a team that wants to match lots and lots of wood combos. CAMMY's blue form received a significant upgrade, I'd say, overall. She has 10-7 combos still. I don't remember how many she had before, but this seems like a large number. She has 4 skill boosts, and she has 2 team HP awakenings. So mixing damage with bulk is always a nice thing. Drawback is her active skill is only 1 turn of damage and attribute absorption cancellation, which, kind of like I mentioned beforehand, it may not be enough. And because we don't have dungeon information, when you enter a dungeon, you don't know if you're going to encounter a spawn that has multiple, like super resolve with absorption. So you may get far into the dungeon only to realize that you can't actually pass a floor. Doesn't feel good. But if you know for a certain fact that you only need 1 turn, maybe CAMMY could be an option there. And then lastly, there is going to be a new godfest and new godfest exclusive monsters coming out, but I'm going to take a look at Nova and Friends when their respective godfest is actually released, because it's not quite here yet. It's not quite relevant, so I'll talk about that in the future. So, with that being said, those are all the new evolutions, upgrades, and various things that went live with version 21.3. I did lots of talking, but hopefully it provides you a little bit of insight as to what you can expect to find when you open up Pad again for the first time today. Now, with that being said, let me know what you lovely ladies and gentlemen think about all these new changes in the comment section down below, and which cards are you most excited about utilizing once again. Regardless of all that, hopefully you all have a truly fantastic day. I wish you best luck in your own pad adventures, and happy puzzling.